I got it now, Summer. Summer, we're all set.
Okay, cool.
All
Have
right,
a
Donna.
beautiful discussion.
Enjoy the marshmallows.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm jealous, Summer.
Bye.
We actually have salt marshes in Nebraska. Can you imagine that? That's where I did my graduate work.
Summer has her moon sitting in Sagittarius. There's a subconscious energy that's always looking for an adventure and a cold beer.
I like her.
This is good energy. All right, gang, as always, I'm in your service to facilitate, to sit back or to contribute however you'd like. And then I know you guys are growing very familiar with each other. So of course, it's a group session. We can support one another as we go along. It's an ad hoc discussion. So anything Chris had sent, you sent a beautiful email, by the way. And so there's a lot of compassion for what you're going through at school. My belief is that it's not even the canary in the coal mine at this point, because the canary's already dead and the coal mine is growing more and more toxic. But metaphorically, there is a great deal of distress that's building up in our ecosystems. And it's my belief that that distress is about to step into another level. It will make the last 18 months look somewhat docile with what's forthcoming. And so what you're experiencing in one way or another, we're all going to experience or already have experienced, and it's likely to accelerate. It's just my belief. And so we can talk about it on a personal level. We can talk about it on a metaphysical or a spiritual level. We can talk about it in a very practical way. It's however you'd like to approach it.
Yeah, just a little context. So I've been working here for about 16 years now. And so I've been here a long time. I'm like a tenured faculty member. So my job is pretty safe, I guess. And so I feel like I can speak out where others may not be able to. And I don't really watch the news or the media, and but I know a lot of people do. And I've caught wind of this general movement towards vaccine passports and restricting people's movements who aren't vaccinated, restricting their ability to go to restaurants, restricting their ability to maybe even travel places, certain states. And so with that as a background, my university, as our other universities, are beginning to implement some of these additional requirements or restrictions for non-vaccinated individuals. So my university in particular sent out a policy saying that you had to submit your vaccination card or whatever, or they said they strongly suggest that you do so. They didn't actually say you had to, but if you didn't, whether you were vaccinated or not, then you had to submit yourself to weekly testing. And so that really rubbed me the wrong way. I didn't think that was right, didn't sit well with me. And so I sent out an email not to the entire university, but there's like this email list, which is like they call it the academic forum. So it's just like a place for non-official university business for discussion. And it's really, there's about 400 people on it, and I don't even know who's on it. I just sent out an email to that, just explaining, this is not sitting well with me. I'm not going to participate. Here's why. And I knew the responses I would get. Like I knew when I was writing it that I would hear the argument right away. Well, it's not our policy. It's the North Carolina system policy. So we have to follow that. I knew I would hear, well, it's for the common good, or I'm going to do this to be safe for everybody, and all those things came back at me immediately. I saw some people in the hallway who I'm not really close friends with, but they're close colleagues. And one of the colleagues said, yeah, they should really do a vaccine mandate. And so I told him what I was thinking about it. And he was he looked at me like I was crazy. And it was, it's like, how could you even, go against something like that? We need to be safe. We can't, we have to get out of this. And So I don't know if I'm ever going to golf with him again. And then ran into another colleague who asked me if I was an anti-vaxxer, and he thought I was out to lunch. And fortunately, my girlfriend's very supportive, and I ran it by her, and she's all in my camp, and we're all in this together. And I did hear just yesterday or 2 days ago from somebody else on campus, the first person who wrote me an email and just thanked me for having the courage to put it out there. She was an adjunct professor, and she said she didn't feel like she could say anything, and so that made me feel really good that at least there's one person that
there's more than one. There's more than one person.
Yeah.
If you went out to a group of 400, there's more than one person.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's half, but it's more than one person.
Yeah, and so I felt really poorly for a day, that I was just standing on this hill all by myself. And then, but in the last couple of days, I wrote like a couple of follow-up emails to the group. And I talked with Mithy some, and that helped a lot. And so I just wrote like a final email to everybody at the university. I'm like, look, if you want to discuss this further with me offline, it's fine. But I just made the case for people to have free choice who are unvaccinated. And I said, look, what does the common good even mean? Like what's, it's kind of, that's what dictators use, right? To get people in line, the common good,
to affirm their power.
Sacrifice your individual freedoms for the common good. That just seems backwards to me.
And suppress public discourse.
Right. And so it's just this overwhelming peer pressure, and it's like, feels like an avalanche. Everybody's on this side. And, but I sent out that email, and I feel good about it now, and I feel supported.
Well,
but it was rough going there for a couple of days. So that's kind of what was happening.
And you're vaccinated.
I am, and I didn't really make that publicly known.
That's the great irony, is that you're standing in a position of truth and morality, but not with personal bias.
Right. And I don't feel like I should have to tell people either way. It's my personal choice.
Actually, under the HIPAA laws, legally, you're not obligated to disclose anything of your medical status.
Right.
We're compromising a lot of our values as a nation. The First Amendment being the big obvious one, but there's a lot of others that are cascading afterwards. Right is right, even if no one's doing it, and wrong is wrong, even if everyone's doing it. That's not my quote. That's a wise saint that came before us. So we find ourselves in a bifurcated society that is growing more divisive all the time, with a belief structure that one camp or the other has to be wrong.
That's the point I made. Each choice people make is valid.
Well, the hardest choices in life have no single answer.
Yeah.
But whatever it is that you're facing, the most challenging moments of your life don't have a clear yes or no, black or white, up or down. They're always existing in shades of gray. And so the public forum is allowed to suss out those grays so that we can figure out what's best for the individual or what's best for the collective within the grays. But if you go and bring forth a point or an argument that exists somewhere in those state of gray, and the immediate response is discriminatory or accusatory, or some form of banishment or censorship, then the public discourse shuts down, and the fabric of a free liberal democracy is now being challenged. The very fabric, the essence of what's brought us as humans to this space, has been oriented around the ability to share thoughts and to be able to exchange those thoughts with others who may not agree with them, but are willing to open up the discussion with the thoughts of others. And so if you're being demonized for having thoughts that differ from their thoughts, and you're not, and you're being punished for it, it's as if you're like your adjunct professor, she was fearful of speaking up. It's a single greatest indication of a breakdown in society. The bigger question around it, which we do not have to explore, it's just where my mind has been, is the why. Why is this happening? We're aware that it's happening, and we've all been experiencing it now it's been intensifying over the years. But why? At the beginning of your career, if you had sent out an email to 400 colleagues, it's crazy when somebody drops off the call, the frames all move around. I'm like, wait, I'm looking at Chris. No, he went down here. It's like Hollywood.
Shuffle.
It's like Hollywood squares. I know, I gotta go down here.
Well, it's just you, because I don't get shuffling.
And so the why, it's at some point you'll be called into when the effects, when you process and reconcile the effects that you're experiencing personally, as it sounds like you went through a tough few days and then you you move through it. And you're standing in your truth and the virtues of self, right? You can compromise yourself and feel okay about being in a state of compromise for a few days, but that vibration carries with you forever, because you'll reflect back and be like, wow, I compromised here and I compromised here and I compromised, and you wind up, you're like, geez, I compromised my whole life. You can stand in your truth and be like, holy shit, I'm under fire. And that can be a difficult moment, but as the years go by, your courage will have carried you into a more beautiful space, and you'll carry the vibration with you with a greater degree of love and compassion for self and other self by virtue of standing in that space of truth. It's the vibration that carries forward, right? You stood up for yourself. You'll feel good. You feel good about it now. You'll feel good about it as the months and years go by. Because this is Chris, and this is how Chris felt. And Chris took a moment to share that he couldn't sit idly as others were being discriminated against in a two-tier society was forming all around him in a liberal democracy that's supportive of an academic institution that's supposed to allow for freedom of speech. It just didn't feel right. So let's go ahead and say something, because if it doesn't feel right, then we should talk about it.
So the provost wrote to the group as well to respond. The provost is like the chief academic officer for the university, basically second in charge. And he was actually very empathetic and encouraged open discussion. But he also wants to talk to me personally. So I have a phone call scheduled with him next week. I'm not sure exactly where he's going to be coming from, but it'll be interesting to I'm just going to ask him, what can I do for you? You know?
Yeah, give him, just as you desire a forum to be open and communicative, give him that same forum. You know, like receive him, receive him with no guardedness, no defensiveness, just like what's on your mind. Like, thank you for your email. I'm glad you reached out. It's nice to have support for open discourse. You know, what are you thinking? And he might be like, oh, it's a sensitive subject, or let's not push whatever it is, just receive him.
Yeah.
Just receive him.
I admire you for speaking out, Chris, and then it gave other people courage to do the same.
Yeah,
So you're kind of the lead. Yeah, you seem to be the lead on that. And that's amazing.
because I'm the opposite. I would not speak up. I've always had this issue. I have a hard time with that. So, but hearing someone do it first will give me the courage to do it. So that's awesome that you did it.
Well, I had some encouragement. I see a chiropractor every 3 weeks, but he's also my therapist in a way. And I asked him about what he thought about it. And he really encouraged me to speak my truth, because his thoughts are in alignment with mine. And he's always been very supportive, and he helped me through my divorce. And so I consider him a close friend, even though we don't like hang out or anything. So, and my girlfriend helped me too. I ran it by her. So I had lots of people really that pushed me forward. So I'm really grateful for them too.
It's easier to go forward when you have the support, but that doesn't mean it's not hard to do when it happens. So I'm glad you have support behind you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Allan, I still remember when you told me that, and I explained to you that I have a hard time talking to people and saying what I feel, that as long as there's truth to it and that you say it in a respectful way, that's helped me a lot, actually. And I'm actually teaching that to my kids, because
Yeah,
they're like me. So
you never have to worry about sharing the truth.
yeah. And I've been put in situations where it's like very difficult, very touchy subjects, but as long as it's truthful and I'm
Yeah.
compassionate, it's okay.
So,
And the way they handle it is what they have to deal with. That was very powerful what you told me, and it's helped me so much.
I'm glad to hear it. It just
My girls too.
so they're actually slightly different conversations. When something is truthful, the vibration of truth is just incredibly high. You can just express what's truthful, right? The way in which you express it is important, but the truth is the truth, and you don't have to be so fearful of how the truth is going to be received, because it's the obligation, as you said, the responsibility of the individual receiving truth to process what comes up for them, right? What Chris is sharing is more of an opinion, right? He vocalized his views on a contentious social issue. But if it's coming, so in this case, it's not whether it's truthful or not, like it's truthful that this is what he feels, but really the qualifier is more the vibration by which Chris communicates. So if he's open to the dialogue and he brings forth an opinion which is articulate and considerate, and it comes from a loving space, which is the desire to care for the needs of others, then the opinion can be healthily shared without worry. Right? You can see it all the time when you see somebody's opinion online, it's coming from that hateful space or they're seeking conflict. Right? They may have a very valid view, but because the vibration is so low, the opinion's not going to be it's going to create conflict. Chris's intention wasn't to be in a state of conflict. But oftentimes you see in public discourse, people are just, they desire the conflict. They provoke the low vibration of frustration or anger or animosity. And so in the context of fact, you can just share fact and then monitor the method by which you share it. In the context of opinion, you have to check the vibration behind the opinion that you're feeling. Okay, and that.
So if you,
go ahead.
So if you are delivering truth to somebody in more just a neutral space, possibly with love, is that enough vibration to raise a vibration of the conversation?
Yeah.
Or can you like send out energy from your heart space around the person you're talking to kind of, I don't know, send love to the person?
Your vibration is automatically influencing the vibration. You're always, like even this conversation now, like we're going to feel differently at the end of the conversation than we did at the beginning of it. And you know that the vibration is a positive one if you're looking forward to the discussion, if it brings joy, if you feel an expansion of consciousness, like which is you're seeing things in a better light before, different from how you were seeing it before. If you have those aha moments where you're like, wow, that makes sense and that makes sense, it's a reawakening of a knowing that's already resident within you. And that's a pure indication that you're moving in the right space. We give our human mind too much credit, like, oh, I figured this out. It's like, no, you just awoken what you already knew, most of the time. And so in the context of you being of high vibration and bringing forth truth to another, if you're able to stay in that space, you're automatically a benefit to the individual. They may have too much guardedness, or they may be too wounded to properly engage in the conversation. A lot of people were traumatized by being locked down for months, and they were bombarded with imagery all day long that was telling them that they were going to die if they walked outside without a face mask on. And so now the moment has come where they're certain that if everybody gets vaccinated, we'll all be saved. And you have somebody that says, hey guys, I don't want to discriminate against those that aren't vaccinated. And they're like, fuck you, don't put me back in lockdown. You know, screw you, I don't want to wear face masks again because you don't want to get vaccinated. Their mind is not seeing things clearly, and the vibration of trauma and fear and anxiety is still so present that it doesn't allow them to be healthily engaged in the vibration which is present, even if it's a loving one. Okay, and that's where you have to be conscientious, not just of your vibration, but of your audience. And so I actually was in a discussion with somebody and I sent them some talking points around what I believe is occurring now. And they responded, and I said, give me a couple of days, I'll respond to your email. And the response I got was, I'm not interested. I don't need to hear your answer. And this is actually a relative. And in that moment, I said, I wish you love and light. I will not bring forth my views if it's your request not to receive them. I wish you love and light, and I hope it all works out for you. This is somebody that would vaccinate her children if they had an infant vaccine available for COVID. And that's her journey. And so that's okay. And so you recognize that you do your best to bring forth the right vibration, because your journey is always one of emanating that vibration. And then you're conscientious of the energy around you. And if the energy around you is confrontational and conflictual and not interested, you wish them love and light. You send them on their way. There is a profound bifurcation of consciousness unfolding on the planet right now. And the planet is moving from a third density to a fourth density planet. We have been talking about the ascension for generations, and it is upon us. And there will be those that will ascend with the planet whose vibration will be compatible with a much higher vibratory space. And there are those that are locked into a fear-based consciousness that will not ascend. There is no other way. This is how the mechanism unfolds. This is regarded in some circles as the battle of the law of one, because it articulates it very clearly. You have a service to self and a service to others' energy, and the vibration that is dominant between those two groups is actually dividing. It's creating a battle line, if you will, that's dividing the groups. And the more one group moves into consciousness, the greater the gap occurs, because the other group is stuck in usually a fear-based or a selfish-based space. This is
Allan,
the
but
intensification
wouldn't
that
it-
we're going to witness. Go ahead.
wouldn't those who are of a higher vibration, so back to that David Hawkins graph that you had sent us, so say those who are vibrating at a love, a joy, enlightenment,
Sure.
wouldn't they be able to pull those who are at 3D up? I mean, isn't that the purpose?
So it is possible. You have to think of where you fall in that spectrum. Somebody who is all the way down in the shame, guilt, and fear space would need incredible exposure to somebody who is an enlightened, or which none of us are truly enlightened, but I mean, within reason, but maybe in a loving space. They would need to desire tremendous exposure to that vibration, and that over time could potentially pull them forward. And I can tell you that for every one email that comes from someone like Chris, who says, hey guys, let's not mistreat others just because they chose not to get vaccinated, there's 1,000 hours a month of media content that is streaming through their phones and their computers and their televisions that is yelling at them to discriminate against people based on their medical status.
Mm-hmm.
It's a remarkable battle that's underway, and the amount of love that they would need to counteract the amount of fear that they're receiving, they're not getting it. I can tell you that they're not getting it. And unless they're on these type of calls all day long, they're not getting it. And they're not on these calls.
Right.
They're more comfortable watching the fear porn than they are engaging in these open discourse conversations. That's why they attacked Chris to begin with. Okay, and I want to come back to what you're saying, where you say, sometimes you can you think about speaking up, but then you're a little bit, you're like, oh, I'm not so sure I can do this. In the event you should choose to speak up, right? It's always a choice, but in the event you should choose to speak up, articulate in that process that it's a little uncomfortable for you, that it's not normally something that you would do. It's remarkable how that moves you into a state of truthfulness that actually carries a vibration that allows you to be more expressive. Like, hey, everybody, I would normally not say anything, and you'll have to bear with me because this is a little bit out of my comfort zone, but I don't think that this is right. Like, that kind of energy is a lot better than, hey, everybody, that's not right.
Like more humble, like
it's more humble, but it's also it's healthily vulnerable. Like, vulnerability is actually a high, in this context especially, it's a high vibration. Like, I'm not perfect. I have my weaknesses. I have my human mind that creates maybe unfounded anxieties, but I want to articulate what I'm seeing here, and I'm dealing with the human self in doing so. it just eases you into it. When someone's on a date and they're really nervous, I'm like, just tell him you're nervous. You're like, what's he going to think of me? He might be endeared by you, but even if he's not, if you're honest and you're nervous, that's truthful. It's not a bad thing. And then you find out all the time, the girl's like, I'm actually nervous to be hanging out with you. And then the guy's like, oh, it's so sweet. Like, what has you so nervous? And then he's like, I'm nervous too. Or whatever unfolds from there. The more truth you find yourself expressing, especially if it taps into your heart space, usually mostly good things come. Okay. I want to do the best that I can to prepare you guys for this belief structure that what Chris experienced is just a little bit of a microcosm of what's unfolding planetarily. And it's not a random event. This is all part of the design as the battle rages between the light and the dark.
Starting Monday, New York, you can't go to the gym, you can't go to restaurants, you can't go to indoor events.
Yeah. So that level of discrimination in a city like New York, right? So like, who's not vaccinated in New York? It's disproportionately the minorities, so the Blacks and Hispanics, and a lot of immigrants. And now you're forbidding them from walking into restaurants. Here, and you look at the data around it, and it's also sketchy around how you catch this thing and whatever. Here in Italy, as of last week, and in France, you're not allowed to get on the trains if you're not vaccinated. And in Italy, we have a lot of ferries because they go back from the islands and they skip around because a lot of coastal cities. These are open air ferries. It's like 100, like literally my computer says it's 102 degrees out right now. Right? And we know that this virus doesn't spread outdoors, that the sunlight actually strengthens your immune system. The data is pretty conclusive around it. It spreads in your living room, right? It doesn't spread outside. It certainly doesn't spread in 100-degree heat with the sun beaming down on you. And yet you're not allowed to get on a ferry for 20 minutes to go from Sicily to the mainland unless you're vaccinated. But why? Nobody's catching COVID on the ferry. There's never been a documented case of catching COVID on the ferry. In Germany, they arrested 600 people who went on to protest their vaccine pass. And they arrested them because they said, you're not allowed to gather in public because you're going to catch COVID. And
is this the elite 5D negative that's doing this? I mean, I thought it was only existed in New York. I didn't know that they had that power.
Yes, it is the elite 5D negative is a good way of putting it. These are the low vibrational, high density, low vibrational beings. So there's a whole another conversation, but when you start to see things that don't make sense and they're deliberately suppressing public movement, discriminatory and designed to create a tiered society, it's the same vibration that existed in Nazi Germany in the late 30s that started to strip certain populations of civil liberties and then eventually citizenship. And they kept chipping away, and they created that same tiered structure because it's easier to control a population when they're divided. The population starts to attack itself. I'm glad I'm not them. And the other population says, what's wrong with you? Why is it okay for me to be discriminated against? And then you get this, when all the while it is being controlled by a much higher, more insidious energy.
I try to tell the people in my recovery group that separation is the disease, and what's going on. And I think I told Chris, this is very much a 1984 us versus them. Eurasia is bad one day, Amerasia is bad, Eurasia, back and forth. And using other people as scapegoat. And it is, like you said, it's very much what had happened to the Jews, the Holocaust.
It's the same idea. It's very much, and it wasn't just the Jews. The Nazis decided to discriminate. The Gypsy, anyone of spiritual intention got caught up in it. And then anybody who was seen as weak or inferior So the cripples, right? The blacks got thrown into, there weren't a lot of blacks in that society, but the camps killed 6 million Jews, but they also killed 4 million others that were seen as in one way or another against the Nazi agenda. And a lot of those camps were operating next to towns, and the towns would complain because the smell was so horrible. And yet all the while, you know, it's, at least it's not me kind of consciousness was running through. And most of those people didn't feel they could do anything anyways, but they took time out of their day to go and complain when the winds shifted direction and they were bothered by the smell.
But that's because of the human or 3D tendency to think of self and only self, right? I believe that Chris and Anna, you, as Erica, because you guys are part of a higher vibrational consciousness, you're able to think of others, of a group oriented.
Anybody, it doesn't matter your level of consciousness. Everybody, the human capacity for compassion is limitless. It is part of the choice. This is a realm of choice. Everybody in this realm is constantly presented with an opportunity to make a choice. Do I prioritize me or do I prioritize the needs of others? And usually it's how do I create the right balance between prioritizing my needs and prioritizing those that are around me. So people ask, when does this all end? So when humanity is unified, because the fourth density is the realm by which we start to form a social memory complex, which is the individual stays true to themselves, but they end up prioritizing the needs of others.
But wouldn't energetically, those who are of low density, because they took the vax, as you said, the body would reject it or get sick, wouldn't, lack of better words, Mother Nature purge itself for those who do not an energetic match to her vibration? There's going to be a lot of people that are going to exit Earth.
There's already been a lot that have left.
There will be a lot more though.
This is the belief.
Right. So
belief.
those who are of
and it will happen suddenly. Everything is fine, and then it's like, holy crap, what's happening?
But is it the vaccine that's also causing the sudden drop?
So remember, so I have to disclaim these conversations. It's just my belief, guys. It's just my belief. It's not my belief, and it's just to be supportive. It is not to create some type of doomsday environment. And so the belief is, and this is what I've been witnessing already, the belief is that a frequency can be emanated that can activate the bioweapon that's injected into the body. And so it's already happening where a number of people will fall ill or perish, but it will happen in a covert way so that it doesn't create any panic and so that people continue to get vaccinated along the way. But it is designed as a depopulation mechanism, as well as one that fosters great fear to help the negative vibration to move into a state of greater control over the broader population. And so the planet is trying to pull forward. There are many incarnates that are bringing a vibration that is supportive of that ascension. There are energies that are here that do not desire an enlightened state for the planet. And so they have promoted a bioweapon to control and to maim or kill, and to also lower the vibration of the incarnates here to retard the process of the ascension. And ironically, they're doing it for their survival, because those beings of very low vibration cannot survive in a realm that ascends. It can only survive in a third density realm, which has greater neutrality. When it moves to a fourth density realm, they'd be too weakened to persist.
Can I ask you a question about that? And this is just a weird question. Are those people that we call people humans, or like, do they really know that that's what they're doing? I'm so confused, because as human, why would you want to do that to people? Like, I don't understand that. Does that make sense? Or is just me?
Remember Victor, the 1980s?
It's a good question.
Anna, you don't give yourself enough credit. It's the right question.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the right question. And I, for the longest time, was like, it can't be, and it can't be, and it can't be. And I'm like, okay, I'm a very sane, level-headed man. I have a background in finance and economics. I spent my life in a practical space poring over numbers and analytics. Can't be. Can't be. And so I was trying to think of a way, if this question came up on the call, how I would articulate it. Have you ever done one of those genetic tests where you like spit into a little vial and they like tell you all, you know, like, oh, you're predisposed to this illness and you've got, you know, like 3% Neanderthal or whatever it is, and you're Ashkenazi Jew, like you get all that information back. You know what I'm talking about?
Mhm.
When I saw that line item, it said, oh, you're 2.8% Neanderthal. And I'm like, 2.8% Neanderthal, like my DNA. And I was like, okay, well, what are the Neanderthals? Okay, so they're a bipedal hominoid species that went extinct on the planet about 50,000 years ago. And they were breeding with humans for long enough that some of their DNA persisted. And those of us of like Northern European descent still have a chunk of that DNA in our body. And so I'm thinking, I'm like, okay, if there was another hominoid being that was upright on 2 feet, it was hanging out with humans, was there only one other hominoid being, or were there others? And there were others. This planet is a 4 billion year old planet. The humans that we know are only a few 100,000 years old. And so there were others, and apparently they've been here since the beginning. Where the conversation gets a little bit harder to understand, this is the part that I was like, okay, that makes sense, like that I can believe. Where it gets a little bit harder to understand is that different conflicts at different times, and as the planet and the atmosphere changed, apparently we have beings that live on planet and we have beings that live in planet.
Okay, what does that mean?
It means that you can burrow down, like if you ever dug into the soil and you're seeing all these insects, you're like, wow, there's so much, there's like a whole ecosystem. Or if you go, you watch some of those nature channels where they go like a mile down in the ocean and there's no light and it's all heavy pressure. And you're like, so much going on down there.
Okay, I get it.
We're under this belief that all life exists on the surface, and it doesn't. And so apparently for a very long time, a very, very long time, there have been beings, some of them are vibrating positively, most of them are vibrating negatively, but there are beings that have been residing in the planet, and they have been influencing the workings on the planet and doing it very covertly. But when the Nazis were running the camps, they were diverting a lot of resources. A lot of their bright scientists were doing genetic testing on children. In the 40s, they were doing tremendous medical experiments on kids. Why? Weren't they trying to win the war? Why was genetic testing a priority in the 40s, before they even knew of the sequencing of DNA? They had no idea, but why were they doing so much genetic testing? Okay, so that same vibration, that same consciousness has been working for a long time to splice in their DNA into the human DNA. And they need, and a number of people like Mark Zuckerberg, like you listen to him, like, that guy's not human. Because he has a chunk of this DNA in him. And so his consciousness is operating in a service to self vibration, which is the energy of those beings.
Yeah, that makes more sense, yeah.
And so because they've been working on this for so long, we all have a port. We can actually, you can just remember that video where I asked you guys call to the Arcturians to help clear any, you can call to the Arcturians to clear any of this foreign DNA from your body, right? Because we have a portion of it. The idea, this is the premise, is that if they can move your DNA enough into their DNA, then they'll be able to create a controlled environment and humans will behave more like them. That's kind of the fundamental belief around it. And so a lot of the weaponry that's floating around the planet has that very intention in mind. Reduce the population, start to shift the DNA of those that remain, put them into a more controlled space, and continue with a lot of different tools. Some of them simple, like visual tools, like when you're watching TV and the internet, some of them more profoundly DNA-based mechanisms to bring them more into an adapted state that these beings can take advantage of. And a lot of the politicians and the business and big tech, big media, big politicians and big pharma, the leaders of virtually all these organizations have enough of this DNA in their system that they're already thinking in alignment with these beings.
Allan,
Yeah.
hasn't the choice already been made though? Aren't we going to ascend 4D positive, regardless of the
What
outcome of
happens?
this?
So apparently these beings don't believe that. And
But what's the truth though? It's the truth that we're going to, or we have already?
yeah, so we're
Planet at least.
yeah, so I'm not the authority on it, right? Like I can give you what I know, and then you'll take it with a grain of salt. You guys can obviously challenge the belief. So the belief emanating from the positive camp is that there's enough vibration pouring in now. Many of the incarnates that are arriving are wanderers that are of the light, that are bringing in positive vibration. So it's a function of time. How long does it take for the vibration to shift because of all this beautiful energy that's arriving? I understand that at the same time, the channel that's bringing in incarnates into the service to self camp has been closed. And so these beings that I'm speaking of have no mechanism to continue to reincarnate, which is why it's an act of desperation now that they have to take over the human space to persist. I was also told that many of the higher ups within these beings have seen that inevitability and have since left. And a lot of the UFO sightings that have been going on for the last however many years have been a small percentage of the most higher ups departing. And so the belief, and so then there's those that remain that didn't have a choice. And they figure that if they're going to perish anyways, they might as well go out with what they feel is their best likelihood of not going out, which is killing as many humans as necessary and then taking over the human race. And many of them were lower down the list anyways. They didn't have a choice. They were workers. They were just left behind. And so if you ask those of the light, yes, Chris, that's the inevitability. The planet will ascend, and the Federation that's bringing in the resources have kind of made that inevitability. But the others that are left behind of low vibration, they're fighting for their survival in their own way. And they have a playbook that they can draw from because this same mechanism has been used on other planets successfully to enslave other planets. And so what we're experiencing, where we get restrictions and then we get a reprieve, where we get illness and then we get a reprieve, where we kind of go into, it's been used before successfully.
I have a question. What happens to the innocent souls who did not know? So I'll just speak to the community that I'm in. A lot of them are doing their best to be of service to others. They have taken the vaccination, so they're not of the high vibration yet.
Yeah.
I'm sad to hear this because I know what you speak is the truth, but also they would be concerned about their souls of being in prison because they can't come back to Earth, so they'd have to go somewhere else. But
It's true.
You
guys are doing very, very well. I thought I was going to get into this conversation. I'd hear the crickets again, but you're all asking the right questions.
But because of the abrupt death, right? So let's say that so planned, I, Minty, was supposed to live out at least till 60 until I could propel myself from a 3.5 to a 3.7 consciousness. So although I knew I wouldn't be able to eligible to come back the next lifetime on Earth, but I'd be eligible to go to maybe another planet. but because of being inoculated,
Yeah.
now I didn't have a chance to elevate to
Yeah.
3.7. So now I'm stuck at 3.3, 3.4. So my heart is like, I'm like trying my best not to cry. My heart is like tearing.
But don't think of it, you're seeing it through the human eyes. Recognize that the soul is just experiencing everything. We think of good and bad, light and dark, but there's an explanation for it that at some levels there's justification, and it's an explanation that we can't comprehend here, but it's an explanation that at some level makes perfect sense. But I'll share with you to assuage any of the anxiety that you're experiencing. I'll share with you 3 points. The first is that if your vibration, if like some people felt that they're truly forced into it, and if your vibration is high enough, it's metaphorically, you could think of it almost like a poison or like an oil that enters into the body. It can be relegated and remain somewhat harmless if your vibration is very high. If you're in a low vibrational state, you're going to spread that weapon throughout the body. A typical vaccine enters into the deltoid, and the body goes and creates the antibodies and shunts it through the lymphatic system, and it leaves the body almost right away. This one enters into the body, and it has an encapsulation technology that allows it to bypass that mechanism. It cleaves off the cell, and the spike protein starts to replicate. And then it starts to accumulate in the ovaries and the bone marrow and the spine and the brain. And so depending on your vibration, it speaks to how quickly it replicates and spreads. And so that's the first part of the conversation, is that people are well-intended and have high vibration. They may be able to stave off the effects of the weapon. The second is that there are remedies that are floating around now that seem to be quite supportive. Okay, and so some people will find their way to these remedies. And some of them are spiritual remedies. A lot of them are just very practical, like tea and supplements that can help. And so we can speak to that as well. And then the final thing, which is where does the soul go? If I understand it correctly, those of third density that have chosen this path will not be able to return to the planet, because the planet will have ascended and their vibration will not be congruent with a fourth density planetary sphere. They'll wind up somewhere else. And so there will be a lot of people who perish because of all the chaos that envelops. And some people will unfortunately be like collateral damage. They get caught up in the conflict. But if they're unvaccinated, they'll return here relatively quickly. And there will be those that are vaccinated that will perish and will not return.
So this is what I learned. I'm making an assumption, but the majority of us who are here, correct me if I'm wrong, are not original Earth souls, right?
The 5 of us on this call, as far as I know, Chris is so humble that he's not sure, but the 5 of us that, as far as I know, the answer is yes.
So this is what I learned through the courses, is that what made Earth so valuable was that Earth allowed 8 of the divine virtues to live here, plus it's also its free choice. So majority of the souls first came to Earth, loved Earth, and then just returned to Earth. And also when we reincarnate, we choose likely the same people that we're familiar with too. And I think you know, Allan, one time I'll be your daughter, you'll be my dad, we'll be brothers, we'll be sisters, lovers, etc. It's my human self, but my heart really hurts that those who could not ascend or didn't know enough and believed the government and took this, that they cannot come back to Earth.
So it's okay.
You know,
it's okay.
I think that was it.
I know. I just to chime in. So some of them had a pre-incarnation plan to take the vaccine or not take the vaccine, which we can't understand why you would choose that pre-incarnation, but some of them did because their spiritual self desired to go down a path or another path. Some of them had no pre-incarnation plan and were given free will, and everything in their incarnation, maybe they had health challenges and they saw the dishonesty of the healthcare system, right? Maybe like a friend of mine, he had terrible reaction to vaccines in his 20s, and it gave him an indication like, don't do it this time around. Like everybody in one way or another was given an opportunity to choose when that moment came. And there's some other element to it that I asked about in a channeled session, and they said you can't understand, but it's not linear, meaning that we think of it like pre-incarnation, starting point, life, trajectory, vaccine, inflection point. You okay?
I really love my group.
I know, it's sweet. I've shed many tears, so I'm very compassionate to where you are, darling. If I was there in your 200 square foot apartment in Queens, I'd give you a big hug.
Thank you.
I would. And actually, everybody in the call, we do a group hug right now.
Yeah, I'm crying with you.
Yeah, we have to. You know, I'm going to tell you two other things. So hang out with me as best you can. So at some level, everything is justified. The human self is the lowest possible point in the spiritual hierarchy from a perspective standpoint. We're seeing it through the pain and the suffering of the human self. The human self is that lowest point, which means that every point above it is a better or a more complete perspective. Right? To see your life through the eyes of your higher self, or to recognize that there's some spiritual intention here and some lesson in learning for those who are polarizing negative or those who have chosen this trajectory, it's okay. That's okay. The other thing that I'm going to share, and this is something that it's good for me to share because I have to work on it profoundly myself, is that your perceptions are molding your reality. And so if your perceptions are that these people are going to suffer, or that their souls are going to be banished, or that the months ahead are going to be harrowing and challenging, right? If those are the perceptions, then that suffering, you'll feel it, you'll witness it, you'll suffer with it. If your perception, if you can shift your perception that this is at some level justified, and that it's what's best for the trajectory of their spiritual self to go through this experience for their own growth, lessons, and learning, then remarkably, the experiences will not be nearly as hard. Your perception of what's unfolding is critically important right now. It's really very important. There is something in their path that required them to go down. A drug addict chose to go into a state of drug abuse because there was something that was misaligned that they had to work through. And it doesn't mean that we don't care for their suffering and desire to be alleviated, but we can recognize that there's some reason why they went down that path.
So if I were to start, now I'm really determined. I certainly found the energy. So if I were to start the trauma recovery meeting and they were able to, as you say, propel forward, would that, right? Would that help them go?
Anything, it's the question from earlier, right? If they're in the space of somebody who's high vibration and you're creating a compassionate, loving space, and they're opening their heart and gravitating into that vibration, and it's enough to overcome all the other low vibrations that they're consuming when they're not with you, then of course it can be of value. So you guys we get to hang out once a month for a couple hours here and there, right? And sometimes some of you will reach out to me and we'll have some private chats. The rest of the time, I'm trying to process this whole experience the same way that you guys are. I'm just another incarnate who has been blessed to have access to spiritual guidance and degree of consciousness, but I'm still going through it as a human would, trying my best to process it. And I've seen family members line up like you wouldn't believe. And I tried, and I tried, and I tried. And I took different tactics. I took the intellectual tactic. I took the firm, determined tactic. You know, I took the loving, compassionate tactic. I had success with one of maybe the dozen that I worked with. I had success with one, and it was only because she was on the fence. It wasn't because she was like, I got to go get it. And it's like, oh, Allan turned me down the other path. It was, I'm not sure. And she said, I don't know what to do. Just tell me what to do. That was the only one that was open. The other 11, and now, of course, they're calling. I think I made a mistake. I don't know. I was thinking maybe it wasn't right. And I say, well, just call for help, ask for forgiveness. Start to alleviate the energetic burden of the choice. If you feel that it wasn't a great choice, call for help. That's ultimately what's going to happen on the planet. Enough suffering, it's already happened for some groups, enough suffering will be had, then enough people will start to call for help. And when the collective consciousness moves into a state where we believe that help has to come from above, that it's not in another booster shot, then help will come and the vibration of the planet will shift and the consciousness will be more cohesive. And those that remain will start to enjoy the beautiful fruits of the fourth density.
But right now we're going through what Jesus went through, yeah?
I think Jesus would see this as gentle.
Okay.
Can you call for help for someone that just doesn't believe in any of this? Because I do that almost every day for my family. Does that help?
So the answer is I pray for family and friends all the time. I know that the effectiveness of any prayer is mitigated if the individual doesn't believe in prayer.
Well, I hope all of you do, because I've been praying for all of you. So I hope, otherwise I'm on my knees for nothing.
No, I do. It's just for other people.
Can I share with you guys a few remedies just to put on your, just they're simple, but they'll help energetically. And then of course, should any of you at any point fall ill, you'll reach out to me and we'll call in for higher, we'll call in for healing from above. We've been given access to some of the most beautiful divine beings that can actively bring forth healing. And so we've been told that the Tulsi tea, also known as holy basil tea, TULSI, that the Tulsi tea, which has been known in India now for centuries as having medicinal qualities, seems to do wonders for the vibration at the cellular level. And whether you're vaccinated or you're in the company of those that are vaccinated, Tulsi tea is a boon. It's a good one to take. You get it in the loose leaf organic. You can find it online. Be careful. The first few times you drink it, don't seep it for too long. It creates a detox for those that have the toxins that it's designed to benefit. If you seep it for too long, you could find yourself hurting a bit. So start slow and then kind of build up. Also, there is what's known as graphene oxide, which is it's a toxic metal that's floating all over the planet. It's even in the air at this point. And it's almost like gunpowder in the body, which can be kind of ignited based on this frequency I was talking about earlier. N-acetylcysteine, which is just a basic amino acid, which is one of the precursors to glutathione. It is the most relevant supplement to take to help the body create the antioxidants to move the graphene oxide out of the body.
Can you repeat that name again, please?
N-acetylcysteine. It's not a coincidence that the last few months, the FDA decided that you couldn't buy NAC online anymore, that you're supposed to get a prescription for it. It's just an amino acid. And they're interfering with, it's not on Amazon.com anymore. It's been there for 20 years. And it's since been taken down. Okay, so this is when the conspiracy theorists are like, aha, like why would that be? It's just an amino acid. So you want to take 1,000 milligrams. It's usually in a 600 milligram form. You want to take 1,000 milligrams or build up to it. Take 1,000 milligrams, and because the graphene oxide, it's certainly in the vax, but it's also in the air, in the food, in the water. It's been dumped. The planet has become so phenomenally polluted that deliberately, we know of the pollution as a byproduct of industry. We don't know of the pollution that is the byproduct of weaponry. And so this is the deliberate pollution of the planet that is built up in the body that is causing a lot of this distress. Okay, and then the third one, which has come to me, once again, these are just through spiritual guidance, and I can't understand this one, but apparently the leaves of a dandelion
Mhm.
have bizarre detoxification qualities. It tastes, it's pretty bitter, but like if you're in, it has to be a natural setting. You don't want to be in a park where they're spraying Roundup everywhere and then start eating the dandelion leaves.
But can't we buy that on a
You can get it in a tea
Amazon?
form.
a
Yeah,
tea
but
form?
if you can get, if
Yeah.
you can literally find a fresh dandelion, just pluck off a few of the leaves and chew on those. Once again, go slow with this stuff. Okay, and the fourth one I share with Erica, we haven't been able to source it, we haven't been able to cultivate it, but we've tried, is apparently the periwinkle plant out of Madagascar. When it grows, the stems, if any of you come across anybody who lives in Africa and or of course Madagascar, you want the seeds and you have to be a botanist, you have to know what you're doing, but they can grow anywhere. It's like the beautiful flower weed of Madagascar. The ones in North America and Europe have been hybridized and they're not potent, but the original plant, when you grow it, you break off a little leaf towards the stem and it has a couple drops of milk. It's like the milk of Madagascar periwinkle. And that is apparently the antidote for the vibrational, some of the weaponry of the vaccine.
Allan, what about weed?
Marijuana,
I'm just
it
kidding.
might be good for pain. If so what ends up happening is you feel fine, everything seems okay, and then there's a frequency emanated that lights on fire basically this weapon that's accumulating in the body, and so all of a sudden people are all of a sudden falling ill. Like I have a very good friend in Chicago. In his late, the healthiest, happiest, athletic gay man you'd ever known. He just wanted to hang out with this guy. And he's very well intended. And he was one of the early vaxxers back in December because he works in a hospital. And he woke up a few nights, he woke up in the middle of the night and he was paralyzed from the waist down and screaming in pain. And so they rushed him to the ER. He had an ambulance come and they could not diagnose him. And they put him on 4 different painkillers and he could not react. He wasn't having any alleviation of the pain. And he just started praying. He just had nothing left. And he said if he had to go through another night like that, he would have rather died because the pain was so overwhelming. And he couldn't understand how he could be perfectly healthy his whole life. And then all of a sudden, after a number of months after getting vaccinated, just wake up in the middle of the night as if his spine was being dissolved, like as if he was being eaten from the inside out. And so that vibration was emanated, it set on fire, whatever had accumulated in his body, and it has parasitic qualities. It was literally as if it had been eating away on his nerves. And so in that case, we were able to call for help. He was praying and he was asking for forgiveness. And we were able to call for help and we got a response back. Like I said, sometimes we don't get a response, or the response is we can't do anything to help because the individual doesn't have faith to carry them into healing. But in this case, the response was, we can't reverse the effects of the vaccine, but we can alleviate the pain and he'll have full recovery over the next few days. And so we told him that. The hospital's like, there's no way, he's not going anywhere. This guy can't even walk now. He's paralyzed. And the next day he was able to walk with a walker, like one of the old ladies down in Miami. And then later that day, they were able to discharge him so he could recover at home. And each day that's passed, he has been able to make progress. And so that's the condition that I would expect to envelop the planet. The medical system will say it's a bizarre coincidence or there's no correlation to the vaccine, and all the while they won't be able to diagnose it. And it will happen in a way where it's rolling, where it'll happen to a number of people and then it'll go quiet, a number of people and go quiet. And so the broader population will have no idea that it's happening. And people will still be going to get vaxxed and they'll still be shaming their colleagues for speaking up against it. And then all the while you'd be like, why is my flight delayed? Like, where's the staff? You know, why are there things missing from the shelf in the grocery store? Why didn't the truck come for delivery? You know, like, why is the post office closed? It's 3 p.m. And it'll be like, oh, staff didn't come in. You know, we're having staff shortage. What's wrong with the restaurants? Well, we can't find enough staff, or the staff we have keeps calling in sick. And so that will be kind of the effects of this. They'll do it as covertly as possible. And the media will keep saying that only those unvaccinated are getting sick. The vaccines are the greatest thing ever. We might need boosters, but that's because the variants are so tricky. And all the while, it's all a manicured message coming out of a playbook designed to maximize control and harm. And this is where I'm supposed to say, I believe. I believe. Go ahead, Chris, you were saying?
So what can we do besides just expressing our own truth?
So your vibration is your most important focus at this point. The remedies for those vaccinated, the remedies are important. And if you believe what I'm saying, then of course, introducing daily prayer into your space and seeking forgiveness from yourself for introducing a chemical that's not of God into your body would be a very powerful start. And then from that point on, those that have been compliant are going to be pushed to be more and more compliant, right? They told us 6 months ago, if only we could all get vaxxed up, we'd go back to life as normal. We have to hit herd immunity 60, maybe 70% was the message. And now they're saying actually herd immunity is 80, maybe 90%. Actually, everyone has to get vaccinated. There's no, I heard today, there's no herd immunity, right? They're like, we just have to keep going for and they're going to say, you got to put back on your masks. It's not safe to leave your home. More and more restrictions are going to start to pile up. And what they really want is for people to be as separated as possible. So as people are dying, it's not as noticeable. If you're in an office space and you're surrounded by 10 colleagues and you see them every day of the week, if 2 of them don't show up, you'd be like, where's Jim and Bob? But if everybody or half of them are working from home, or they're on rolling cycles where 2 guys come in and 8 guys work from home, and then people just disappear, it's less apparent what's going on with the population. And so it'll be the combination of restrictions will be heaped upon those who have been compliant, and there will be greater and greater pressure heaped upon those who have not been compliant, forcing unreasonable restrictions on their lives to make it virtually impossible to stay unvaccinated. Like, can't go to the gym, okay. Can't get on a bus, well, that's difficult because I have to go to work. Can't get on a train, can't fly, certainly. You know what, can't go into a restaurant. What if can't go into a grocery store? You know, like, how far are they willing to push it to force people down a path that they don't want to go down? And so standing in your truth and saying, you know what, I don't want to fucking do this. Or that doesn't feel right to me. That's the bifurcation that I'm speaking of. Those that can see versus those that not only are asleep, but they're actually perpetuating an agenda that's doing deliberate harm. Your vibration will carry you through this.
Chris, would be the butterfly effect to offset that, or at least, right? By me vocalizing, it's shifted some of the other in my community.
It may be more the domino effect. He may actually go and hit others that will move in a different, like it will kick off something, it'll start something, to put something in motion, maybe. You don't want to be, you don't want to be unnaturally, as I was saying earlier, you don't want to be in conflict for the sake of conflict, but you do want to stand in your truth, and you don't want to have to deal with compromising your own self to be compliant to a system that's not making sense. You know, when the Germans are like, look, I don't want to get vaccinated, we're going to go ahead and protest. They're like, sorry, we're arresting you because it's not safe for you to protest against our vaccine. Like that kind of ridiculousness. You know, sorry, you can't get on a ferry that's an open air ferry where there's never in 18 months been a single case of transmission in this space, but we're going to restrict you unless you're vaccinated. It doesn't make sense because it's not intended to. It's intended to suppress and to control. And so you stand up for it, you speak up. The other thing that I was sharing on the call a few months ago was there's nothing wrong with having, you know, a couple hundred cans of really healthy organic soups. Like tuck them away. I've got 150 cans of them. I've got all sorts of food now stored, but there's nothing wrong with that, just in case you can't get to the market. You're like, okay, it's going to be a few weeks. I just have to kind of get through this period, you know? And some people go as far as to have, like, you know, some cooking gas and a little portable stove just in case. And maybe they have like a battery pack and some solar panels just in case. Like, that sort of consciousness, the things that you may anticipate needing over the next year. Like if you use a toothbrush and you throw it away every 3 months, just buy 4 toothbrushes in advance. Toilet paper, if you have room
Sorry,
for this
is electricity going to be disrupted? Potential?
The belief, depending on how it unfolds, the belief is that the people that are responsible for maintaining a lot of these systems may fall ill and not be able to support them. And so they're going to bring in other resources. Like if the gas station in New York, the guy that usually fills the gas station falls sick, they might have to bring some guy in from Jersey. And so there may be a couple days delay before they can divert new resources to help fill up the gas station. And so people show up there and they're like, what do you mean it's out of gas? It's like my folks were flying from Albany down to Fort Lauderdale and they got to the airport, beautiful sunny day. It was a 9-hour delay on their flight. And I said, why do you have a 9-hour delay? They said, staff didn't show up today. It's like, how can that, they knew that they had, what do you mean they didn't show up? And they're like, well, we're waiting for enough planes to come back to move around staff and we cancel a whole bunch of flights and this is just what we're dealing with. It's like, well, where are they? And so it's that kind of event where it's slowly, the data will all show that everything is great, that there's plenty of workers, the unemployment rate still needs, they're pumping more money into the system. The stock market is booming because valuations are stratospheric with all the money printing that's happening. Interest rates are staying at 0. You can borrow as much as you want. All of that will keep the population placated as there is a concerted effort to bring down the overall population.
So with that said, because I tried talking to my husband about this and he thinks I'm nuts. What's
But your husband's not vibrating on this frequency.
Right, I know. And as much as I try talking to him or just to when we go to the store, just to buy a couple of things, he won't do it. He thinks I'm nuts. He thinks it's like so dumb. So
then use language. You love me and I love you too. And I know that this seems crazy. But find it in your heart to either be supportive or just at least be neutral, just for this time. And you can say to him, is it Noah or Noam?
Noam.
You can say Noam. I know we've been together for a long time. You see me do crazy things before. Right? It's just one more of those I love Anna crazy moments.
Okay.
And so we're going to eat these soups at some point. It's a couple $100. I know we can scrounge it. We can figure it out. If nothing happens by the new year, if everything is like it is now, where like everybody seems a little bit crazy, but things are kind of somehow feeling a little bit more normal. Be like, look, no, if nothing happens over the next, say, 5-6 months, we get into the new year and it's all kind of the way it is now, no big deal. Those soups are good for 5 years. Right? But if things start to get a little bit testy and things get a little bit unpredictable, I'll feel much better just knowing that we'll have a few dozen meals to carry us through some tough times just in case.
He's very stubborn. Super. You have no idea. So what I do, I'm just telling my mom to get it for me.
Okay, then I was just going to say, then find a plan B.
Yeah.
There's always a plan B.
He just, he sees what's around, like you just explained, everything's fine, there's no problem. So he's very realistic, like he doesn't think outside the box. So we always.
So I was trying to come up with this conversation for a YouTube video. And I was like trying to draw from history another time when consciousness shifted, but most people couldn't see it. And the one that came to me was about 400 years ago when there was a small group of astronomers who were certain that the Earth wasn't the center of the universe. And they kept saying it. They're like, you know what? I think we're rotating around the sun, not the other way around. And the church is like, don't say that, that's heresy. And they're like, no. I know it's crazy because the sun, we see it from this perspective as if the sun always comes up in the east and sets in the west. And we say, oh, it's a rising sun and a setting sun and a rising sun and a setting sun. But I think the sun is staying still and we're actually the ones rotating. And there were a few people that saw it. But they wound up imprisoned or under house arrest for speaking of it. And most of the other people in those times, they all died absolutely certain that the Earth was the center of the universe. And the greatest irony was that it's a misquote from scripture that has the church holding on so strong. Because the belief is, it says that Jesus said, I am the way and the light, and nobody gets to heaven except through me. Right? This belief that you have to know of Christ and go through him, which is to receive him as your Lord and Savior before you can get into heaven. And Jesus never said that. I am the way and the light, and nobody gets to heaven except by my example, which is this is how you do it. But it's not, Christ had no ego. He wasn't saying you have to take me. He says, just follow my example and you got a good shot at going the right direction. And so the church was fearful that if we believed that the earth wasn't the center of the universe and that there were all these other planets that were equal in their own disposition, that maybe some of those planets had beings as well. And if they had beings as well, how could they take Jesus as their Lord and Savior?
It's one thing after the other.
And so the church is like, anybody who says that has to go to prison. Right? And so I researched it. It took the church 300 years to rescind the conviction of heresy. They held on to Galileo being a heretic for 300 years. And so your husband, his consciousness, the way he sees the world, as far as he's concerned, the sun rises in the east and it sets in the west. And nothing is going to change his view on it.
That's what I worry so much, because sometimes he listens to me, but he's so stubborn.
But a year from now, the five of us could be on this call and we'll be like, holy shit, no one was totally right. I was the one that was wrong. It all unfolded the way he saw it all, just kind of being fine and normalizing. And geez, we stored all those soups. That was silly. It is possible that that happens. Right? Like there's not enough ego here to say, no, I have to be right on this one. I believe that I'm right. It feels like this is of high vibration, but everybody's entitled to an opinion and the future is unwritten. And so if things stay in this quasi-normal state, you know, where they put on restrictions, but somehow we get around them, where the vaccine doesn't really work, but makes people feel better, where the COVID numbers get shitty that every time a new variant comes out. Incidentally, there's 4,000 known variants circulating the planet. The Delta one was the first one that really just kind of kicked up and made its way around, but there's another 4,000 just waiting. So if they're like, oh, geez, the Delta got us, we need more vaccines. It's like, okay, what happens to the other 4,000? How many of those, you know, I asked a friend, I'm like, what are you going to do? Get a booster shot every time there's a new variant? He's like, yeah, whatever it takes. I'm like, all right, 10 a day.
Yeah. People say that.
You know,
It isn't our immune system the greatest barrier.
the weapon, the COVID weapon,
Nature.
the COVID weapon was a form of eugenics that was designed to kill,
What does eugenics mean?
to pick off the weak.
Okay.
So the elderly, the pre-existing conditions, the obese, the susceptible. If you look at the data, if you were under the age of really 65 or so and had no pre-existing health conditions, your likelihood of being hospitalized or dying from COVID is very low. And if you come all the way down when you're like in your 20s or teens, like they're mandating these kids get vaccinated to go to university. And so they're like, let's take an experimental medication, which we know carries a risk, we don't know what it is, against a virus that we have almost a zero risk group for. Right? Like, it's a very hard argument to make when you just pour over the data, not the data that's being promoted by the CDC or the data that's coming out from CNN, the data that's actually being done by virologists who are well-intended, who are pouring over the data. And so the first weapon that circulated did tremendous harm, and it killed the weak and the vulnerable. And it still has, we got squeezed. It has that ability to kill. But it squeezed us into a decision that's even worse, which is the vaccination. And it's largely because the public response and the health policy around it modified the consciousness to believe that the vaccine was the only choice.
But by eating, my belief system is that that's why they dropped in the medical medium.
Yeah, they dropped in the medical medium beforehand to try to get the population healthier. Medical medium is Ra. He's of Ra. He's got a perfect open channel. He has what I would love to have, which is unfettered clairaudience. Yeah, and so he had it, but so this is where it's interesting. Medical Medium was one of 35 incarnates that dropped in with that mission. And we only know of the medical medium because the others mostly committed suicide because they were too crazy with that voice going all the time in their head. And so Anthony Williams, he's a beautiful Libra, actually. He can just have the talkie all the time. He was the one that made it through. And it was his determination that got him there.
What's his name again?
Anthony Williams, he's known as the medical medium. Although if you listen to his content now, he's under attack, energetic attack, and has been for the last year or two. So he's a little bit more erratic. But a lot of people say that the content is too dark. It's hard to listen to him because he's prophesizing a particularly challenging fall season for illness, like the likes of which we've never seen before. And it's his belief.
Even though he's a light being, they're able to control him or manipulate him.
We've all been under control in one way or another. Sometimes temptation is sent into our space to destroy us in the form of like a low vibrational being that comes into our space, but usually it's the psychic attacks we can't see them, but our energetic state is impaired.
That's why it's really important to clear and transmute, right?
And to be of high vibration, to call for help, and to use all these different techniques to carry you each day. That's why, like, someday you wake up, you're like, oh, I feel great. And then the next day you wake up, you're like, holy crap, I feel like shit. It's like, well, what changed? It's like, well, you're getting piled in by entities, vortexes, different types of weapons. That's the nature. There's an ecosystem. Erica knows the earth and its ecosystem. There's an ecosystem that we can't see that's even more complex than the one that we can.
But if we don't give them permission, how can they come into our
Because if
space?
low vibrational beings don't respect your free will.
So even if I say and I protect myself, they don't listen, they won't listen?
Not unless they're very friendly negative beings.
There's such a thing?
No, not that I know of. But you can raise your vibration, and your aura gets stronger, and it creates a force field of sorts to keep you safe. And you can call for clearing. It's really about raising your vibration. That's how the yogis, they sit there zenned out in meditation. They're raising their vibration, and it leaves them largely protected. The planet went through such a heaviness because there were so many weapons floating around, and there still is so much negativity, that we were all feeling it. That we were all suffering in our own way over especially the last couple of years. And you can see it, the way people are treating each other. It's an extension of that energy. It's unmistakable. It's like, we remember what it was like when we were kids, and we look around now, we're like, what? Can't recognize this society.
Yeah.
You know, like, people used to be cordial and friendly. You know, like the road rage and the animosity and the conflict. The random conflict between strangers, you know, in bizarre settings. It's like, what happened? So,
but as we begin to move into a high vibration, the planet will begin to see that unity consciousness, that love and harmony.
It's exactly what I was going to say. The greatest experience that we could have here in this density is to witness the birthing of the fourth density planet. Your eyes will start. Has anybody had their vision start to go a little bit kooky lately? You guys experiencing that yet?
Like blurry?
No.
Blurriness?
Yeah, what's
Yeah,
that?
what do you mean by kooky?
Yeah.
Like, I can't read any, everything's blurred out now. I got my eyes checked, and I was always able to read fine. I got my eyes checked a few months ago, and I was a plus 0.5. So it's like, oh, Allan, you need mild reading glasses. And I was like, no big deal. I waited 2 months to fill the prescription. And by the time I got it filled, I was a plus 1.25. My vision, in the course, it's part of your body, at the cellular level, your body is going to start to shift. Vibrationally, your cells are going to move at a faster pace. It's going to be able to hold more light energy. The time will come in this incarnation when like Erica's a good example. You'll go into a forest, for example, you'll be able to see potentially see the vibration of the trees and see which tree is diseased, because you'll see a darkness within the tree. You'll be able to start seeing if somebody is wishing you harm, they won't be able to get away with it anymore, because you'll look at them and be like, wow, that person's dark. Right now, we're all five of us are really naive, and we get taken advantage of all the time because we just think people are like well-intended, because we're so well-intended. And the time will come, because that's it, the veil. So there's many timelines right now because everything is operating under the veil, right? The veil of illusion, which is the infinite number of permutations when you can't see reality. But when you go into fourth density, the veil thins out and we can all see the vibrations around us, and you converge into a singular timeline, which is we're all going to start living in the same reality. And so those of low vibration will stand out like sore thumbs. Like the next time Mark Zuckerberg gets in front of Congress and he's like, I'm well-intended and I wish to bring Facebook to everybody. Like you won't, like at some point he won't look normal. You'll start to see darkness within him. But that's like over the next few years are going to be the harrowing period of transition, when the light and the dark are battling it out most intensely in the history of the planet, the most intense it's ever been. The battle will come to a conclusion, and then we'll go through a period of healing, because those that remain will have to deal with the wounds of the ones that have been lost and what they went through to get there. Right? And then
There will be wanderers too that will be innocent bystanders.
Yeah, the wanderers that are without consciousness are operating no differently than those than Anna's husband.
He's very complex, but he's so good. Like he doesn't say the nicest things, but he does a lot of the good deeds for his family. Like he's very thoughtful of his family and the people around him, not others, but
I'm not being critical of him. I was just using him as a fun example.
Because I try to understand him and I can't understand him. I've been with him for so long, but he's
just wait to see how he does. Just wait to see how he does when the financial system collapses.
Oh man, I'm gonna move to Italy with you.
Just wait to see how he does. You'll hold him. He'll cry like a baby. He'll be like, I spent my whole life trying to accumulate this, and now it's not worth anything.
That's why I need you to please talk to him. I don't know when it's gonna happen.
It won't matter, darling. It won't matter. I'm happy to have
something that you say to him will connect.
The things I say to the four of you connect, because it's reawakening and knowing. I can say profound things to him if he has eyes but cannot see, ears and cannot hear. His heart is dull. His ears are dull of hearing, and his heart cannot feel. Right? The parable of the sower. Right? But should he open his eyes, see with his eyes and hear with his ears, and begin to feel through his heart and awaken, then I should heal him, as Christ said. It's this belief that those that are asleep because they're not ready to be anywhere else. Most of those that are witnessing the unfoldings of this planet are seeing it through a very opaque lens. The virus came out of nature. The vaccines are only hope forward. Without modern medicine, we'd be doomed. I want to get back to travel, to the museums, to the theater. I just want my life back. I want me, me, me. And that consciousness has no place on this planet anymore. So that vibration does not belong in a fourth density service to others realm. That's the hardest message of it all. Is that they all incarnated here with the opportunity to polarize to the positive and to start caring for others. But the forces of darkness and temptation were incredibly strong.
But can I ask you a question with that? I don't know if I'm going to make sense, but and before you were born, like you knew that this was going to happen to you? Like did Noam know that he had the right intention, but that this was going to get in his way?
Not know him the way you know him, but the spiritual energy that donated into Noam's being knew that he was incarnating into a planet in conflict. And he wanted he hoped for a positive outcome to his incarnation. That's why
Things got in his way.
look at the population explosion over the last 100, 200 years. You know, like there were 1 billion people or something at the turn of the 19th century, and now there's 8 billion people. It took like a gazillion years to get to 1 billion, and then we went, because everyone's pouring in here in the hopes that they would make good. It's very rare for a third density planet to go through an ascension, and especially in the contested environment that it's in, it gave incredible opportunity for experience and choice.
I think Dolores Cannon says that based on what's going on now, this ascension process is, it could really, people choose Earth because you can accelerate, it's harder, so you can accelerate 3 times faster. But because of this ascension process, you can accelerate 20 times faster.
Yeah, the window is opened here.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, I've never seen this correlated,
A
but
lot of souls wanted to be here.
yeah.
And
It's a rare moment, and souls from all over poured in the hopes of capitalizing on it. And you have to understand, this is the tricky part. This is why I've cried about this circumstances. Minty, you've cried now about contemplating the implications. From the soul's perspective, it's just an experience. No matter the suffering, no matter the despair that we witness, it's just another experience. It's a neutral vibration that enters in, and it just desires that experience. It wants to polarize positive, move back for the infinite creator, but it's motivated by experiences, because eventually it will get there. The concept of time as a human is a human experience. Spirit is operating under no time frame. So even if it goes down the wrong path and it has to exist in the wrong space for a long time, eventually it'll make its way out and come back. It's
So we have
very,
to tell and reassure ourselves that it's okay. Right now we're feeling the pain, but it's okay, that this is what was intended.
it is intended, on some level it's intended. There's 3 parts to it. I only partially understand 2 of them. One is pre-incarnation planning. Second is free will while incarnate. And third is apparently something too complex for the human mind to understand. But there's a convalescence of those 3 things at play that determine how everybody reacts at each moment of choice within their incarnation.
so, sorry, back to the law of one, right? So I know I asked this before, but I'm still not fully understanding. So Ra says in his law of one that the wanderers would come down here, but they would be given extra protection of light. Now, for those who are wanderers and they had not been successful, do they go back to the 6D?
Yeah,
Has that potential to be stuck in 3D?
No, I don't know exactly what happens to them. I couldn't get a clear answer on that. I was in my meditation, I tried to understand that. So there is a healing process that happens for a wanderer who takes on a lot of heaviness while incarnate in third density and polarizing opposite to their trajectory. The thing that I do know, right? So we think of a soul almost like a person that's kind of moving through each body. It's actually not that. You have your higher self that's delivering out spiritual energy that's making this incarnation possible. And after an incarnation, your higher self, your soul's energy could return into your higher self, or it could go into other incarnations. Apparently, they're all happening at once anyways. Time element once again screws us all up. It is very possible because you're ultimately seeking to reunify with the source, the infinite creator. Like that's the mission, is that we were created in the Garden of Eden, metaphorically. We chose to leave the garden, but now we desire to return into God's garden. That's the way the Bible depicts it in a way that makes it easy to understand, which is source energy, distance from source, long journey of soul back to origination point. Is that so far so good? It is possible because you're as you get closer, as you move forward, your consciousness expands. You have an awful lot of light energy to deliver. It's very possible that there's only a tiny little bit of your spiritual self that's actually incarnate in your human right now. It's all that you need. You could only fit in a little bit in a very heavy density, which is the third density realm. In the event you polarize negative and you kind of go the wrong way, it's possible that you don't reconnect with your higher self or your social memory complex. It's possible that you have to make your way back to the infinite creator kind of as a separate energy. You come back in on your own time as your own, the portion of you that's incarnate within your soul, within your physical body now. And so if you think about being incarnated in like 1,000 beings all at once, many of them are returning back into their higher self. Some of them are often la la land, and they need to journey on their own. And eventually they get back to the source on their own time. Does any of that make sense? No?
It's like millions of years of work that
It's billions. It's with a B.
billions that just
But here's the thing. But you know, like when you go to bed at night and you wake up, you don't feel like, oh my God, that was 8 hours. It took forever. Right? Like your concept of time turns off when you're sleeping. You can wake up and be like, wow, I'm rested. I must have slept really well. But there's never a period when you're sleeping where you feel like the passage of time or urgency to get somewhere. But if I had you in a car and you were driving from, the Carolinas down to the Panhandle of Florida, you'd be like, oh, it's a long drive. I've been in the car all day, right? If you think about being of spirit, there's no energy or consciousness of time. You're not feeling the passage of time.
But there is if they couldn't return back to the 60 or to their higher selves, is there a sadness because of separation? I mean, that was the huge. I think law one foolhardy. It's a huge sacrifice and risk for those who chose.
Human emotion. Sadness is a human emotion. Right? It's very easy to conflate the human self with the spiritual self. They couldn't. There's only two parts of you. The most defined two parts of your human self that are carrying in from your spirit. And I think you'll like this because it will lighten the mood a little bit. So the two most pronounced parts of you that carry in from spirit, one is the way you love. That is a unique energy that has matured over all of your incarnations that now embodies into your being. And that's why the concept of soulmates is so beautiful, because the uniqueness in how you love has found somebody else over many incarnations that forms a beautiful compatibility with the uniqueness in which the way they love, and they come together and form unison that way. It wasn't there originally. They evolved over many, many years and happened to be compatible as a result.
But that's different than twin flame. Not that I believe in twin flame, but
it's different from a twin flame, which is
okay.
a bit of an urban, it's a little bit of urban legend, the belief that your soul splits into male and female and reunifies incarnate, where it's the same soul that comes together, almost like an incestuous soul. that doesn't happen because there's too much learning and growing that happens in relationships. So it's very rare that the soul would decide to forego the learning in an incarnation or the experience by unifying with itself. There is a very good likelihood that there's another part of your soul that's incarnate with someone else, and you would meet them and be like, wow, I really like this person. Or maybe you don't really like them because their human self is too dominant, but it's the same soul energy and they love the same way.
So
that's possible.
Who share the same social memory complex, there would be a sense of, you would say, homecoming.
There'd be communion. There'd be a communion. You could hang out with people, especially if they've moved past their human self and they're emanating the vibration of their spiritual self. The more they've stepped into their true self, right, which is the second part that carries over from soul, I can explain that. The more they're emanating from their true self, the more you'll feel a natural automatic resonance. A resonance is when your vibration, their vibration are remarkably synergistic. You can come from different walks of life, have different priorities, different ages, everything can be different, and yet there's cooperative. It's a connection. And it's usually very quick. It's beautiful. And that's the second energy that carries over from soul. One is the way you love. The second is this knowing of the infinite creator. It's a knowing of a divine essence. It's a knowing of something beyond yourself, which ends up permeating and generating the energy of humility and compassion and contrition and all these energies that are like, wow, like this is coming because I know that it's not about me. There has to be something else beyond me, and it's showing up in my desire to care for others. And so that carries over from your soul. And so if your soul is very evolved and it's moved towards the infinite creator, it's embodying a tremendous amount of that energy. And if your soul is very
That's
young,
what you meant when you said the inner knowing is strong. I was like, I just see referring by intuition, because I think my intuition sucks.
you and Chris don't give you, and Anna, this is how I know I'm hanging out with those of spirit. You guys don't give yourselves enough credit. You're magnificent in your own ways, and you're not able to see it. That's the most beautiful part about the humility that carries over when you reach that point in your journey. Like, you could be among people that are like completely selfish in everything that they do, and they'll be like, yeah, I'm great, like I've got it all figured out, everybody loves me. And you know that you're with a very young soul because the ego is so present. And you could be like, literally, you could be hanging out with Christ and he would have such humility. And he'd be like, oh yeah, I just moved through healing for 5,000 people in that small little town. Like, who wants to go for dinner? And they'd be like, dude, that was amazing. He's like, oh, I was gifted the ability to request healing. It wasn't me, it was a request. It's actually in the scripture. Somebody says, dude, you have the most amazing things to say. And he's like, you think I'm coming up with them? He's like, I'm not. He's like, it's not me. It's all just moving through me. He's like, you think I'm doing the healing? He's like, I'm just waving my hand. Like, it's not me. Right? Like, that's the beauty of it, is that as you move forward, you realize that you are just a small, little, beautiful being within an endless universe, and that you're unified with all other energy. And that not a single person is experienced any better or worse than the infinite creator. And it's not just being. The caterpillars that Erica wants to save every day when she's out in her backyard are being experienced as beautifully as Erica is when she's saving them. Right? People that think they're better because they have more money or because they've achieved more things, they have degrees on their wall. It's their ego, their human self interfering with their spiritual knowing. The greatest spiritualists could do the most remarkable things, incarnate, and they would never feel themselves any better than anyone else. And that's the beauty of it. That's why we're part of a cosmic spiritual family, and we're walking side by side. We have different skills and talents, different knowing and understanding, but we're all equal in the eyes of God. Whatever it is that you believe, the more I think about our source connection and our creator, the more confused I get, because I can't figure it out. It's not the way it's described in, like Hebrew studies class. It's just, somewhere within the Jewish tradition, they have an understanding of it, but it's not the surface level one that most people hold on to. It's not the old man in the sky with a beard judging everyone. It's not it. It's just experiencing all through us. Yeah. Is this good for today? Anna, what do you want to ask?
No, nothing. I'm just grateful for this opportunity with you and everybody. Really learn a lot. It's just sometimes it's so hard for me to be consistent. Like in my house triggers me. I don't know if it's just being a mom with so much responsibility in the routines. It's just like I can't apply to my girls, and I feel so bad sometimes. Like, oh, just go away. And then when I go out in public, I'm like lovey-dovey to everybody, like, but I do it genuinely,
So can I give you a technique for that?
Yes. And I probably won't apply it because I'm so inconsistent, but yes.
Well, so actually turn that language around, and you'll create a manifested energy that will give you a better likelihood of applying it. Say, and Allan, I'll probably apply it. So ready? Okay, can I give you a technique for that?
Yes.
And I'll likely apply it.
And I will definitely try to apply it.
No, don't. There's no pressure. It doesn't have to be absolute. Just, I'll likely apply it. Like I'd like to apply it, or I desire to apply it.
Okay.
Right?
I definitely desire to apply.
Yeah, well, it definitely is not even necessary, but it's just, this is your free will stepping into an opportunity that you can apply. Right? So think of your behavioral patterns. Like when somebody says, I always get triggered in the same circumstances. Think of yourself, your behavioral patterns metaphorically like a leaf moving down a stream. And every time you've ever been triggered in the past, a rock got dropped into the stream. So it creates a current. Okay, so whenever you find yourself in that circumstance, it's like the leaf starts at the top of the stream and it always goes down the exact same way because all the stones that are there under the water are creating the exact same current each time. Right? Like the time your daughter set the couch on fire, the time Noah, lost his temper at dinner and you fought back with him, all the different moments that happened, whatever they are. The kids drawing the crayons on the walls, right? Oh, there's an endless number of them. Those are all the rocks that kept getting dropped into your stream. And so now when almost anything happens and there's a moment, the leaf gets added to the water and it always goes the same way because the vibration of events from the past have defined a response, an energetic response that's now ingrained within you. So far, so good?
Yeah.
If you don't want that to be your reality any longer, go into a quiet state and start to remember all the events where you've been triggered in the household. And recognize that the exhibition of being triggered, which is usually anger or frustration or impatience, that those rocks in your stream are no longer serving you. And you want to change the current. And so with each moment that happened, okay, I remember she drew on the wall and I grabbed her by the hand and I threw the crayon down and I yelled at her. Seek forgiveness for that moment. Call to Anna, because this is your stream, so that vibration is resonant with you, and say, I recognize that moment of frustration where I was screaming at a 5-year-old child was not serving me, and it's yet still carrying forward energetically into my being. And Anna, I ask for your forgiveness. Infinite Creator, come forth, please, and absorb away this vibration that is not serving me because it's created a pattern that has it repeating itself now. So you're seeking forgiveness from yourself for an act that's happened in the past by bringing back the low vibrational energy that was present, frustration, anger, guilt, whatever it was, recalling the exact event and then asking for it to be absorbed away. And each time you do that, think about your stream as having one of those stones picked off the bottom. And if you do enough of them, the next time the leaf gets dropped in, which is the next circumstance that presents itself, the leaf doesn't go down the same pattern anymore. You'll actually have a moment of pause where you'll be like, okay, how do I desire to react in this moment? There's no more stones guiding your current. The current is now open. You can navigate it differently. And you may say, you know what? I'm not going to scream in this moment. I'm not going to lose my temper. I don't have to anymore. The stream has been opened.
Wow. Okay. That's cool. And I don't have, and what if I don't do it at that moment? Because at that moment I'm still heated. I can do it like maybe later.
And find
Thinking
yourself
about it.
Yeah, find yourself in a quiet space, bring back the event, speak out loud, reflecting on the energy, the low vibration that was present and how it manifested. I got frustrated and I started screaming, Lord, please, whatever language, Infinite Creator, come forth. And Anna, I ask for your forgiveness. I do not desire this vibration to emanate from me any longer. I need to clear it. I need to release this rock from my stream. It's blocking my open current. You can do it for almost any circumstance that you find yourself dropping into low vibrational space. The vibration from the past emanates, carries with you for eternity, actually, until you clear it. Sometimes it carries over from incarnations. Sometimes people are traumatized from past lives and they're still behaving accordingly in this incarnation. They haven't yet cleared or healed the traumas. This is an instance where you haven't yet cleared or healed the low vibration. It's more around the laws of attraction manifesting within you.
Wow, thank you for that.
Yeah, and just by virtue of expanding, opening up your consciousness around it, you're going to realize that this is all with you. The events around you are holding up a mirror. They're giving you an opportunity to choose how you want to react. You can be the calm in the storm. The kids can be crazy, the husband can be crazy, house can be on wheels, and you can still be perfectly centered. It's all very possible.
I've tried that, and they just say, Anna, you're doing nothing. Just
But why?
letting it get chaotic, and
Well,
I try to
But
sometimes.
I'm not recommending do nothing. You can still be communicative. You can still be present. Hey, stop drawing on the walls. I'm taking away your crayons. I'm taking away your crayons for a month. You know, but that's very different from losing your temper.
Yeah.
It's very different from being triggered and going into conflict around it.
Cool. Thank you very much.
You're undoing a behavioral pattern that was infused by your human self in the incarnation. Your spiritual self can't exist in a low vibrational space.
Right.
What you're experiencing is just a human tendency. And with enough intention, you can push it, you can undo it.
I hope so. I will do it.
Yeah, you can do it. You can try. Like, you're perfect the way you are. Everybody has to remember as best they can that all is right and well. So if you choose to break out of the pattern of being triggered, you can. But if it doesn't resonate with you, or you choose to remain in that behavioral tendency, that's okay too. It developed for a reason, and if it's still necessary, it will continue to persist. You don't have to be any different. I can tell you that the more love and acceptance that you place into the equation, the greater likelihood you have of actually evolving out of it. If the energy is of need and must, as if there's something lacking, I have to change, it's going to be much harder to shift.
Yeah.
When somebody says, I have to read all these books, I'm setting this goal, or someone's like, I have to run these number of miles every day, right? The heaviness that comes with it eventually will wear them out, and they'll lose interest in the activity. But if they say, oh, I can do this, I really enjoy doing this, the vibration is one of joy. You know, if the joy is personal development and growth, you're like, geez, I love watching my personality evolve. I get to try to experiment in the household to see if I can get through a difficult moment without being triggered. That vibration gives you the best likelihood of overcoming it.
And does that happen to you guys, or am I the only crazy one that is explosive? Do you guys get triggered too by?
No, I do.
Sure, I bet everybody gets triggered.
Like,
Everybody gets triggered. I do all the time.
Sure. Yeah.
you, Allan?
Well, I get triggered, and then I try to shift. I've got a vibrational, I've got a meter as a fiance, and the moment my vibration goes into a low state, it doesn't matter what I'm saying. She's got her spidey sense. She's like, ah, that's low vibrational. And I've learned, like, in the past, I'd be like, no, it's not. And I'd fight with her. And I'm like, by virtue of fighting with her, I'm like, geez, I'm proving her point.
Been triggered by bad drivers.
Oh yeah.
I just called a guy an asshole yesterday, so.
Another one. Yeah.
It's the same idea, because then that vibrate, like, you never notice when you have a bad driving experience, you get out of the car, and sometimes for however long afterwards, you're still kind of seething from it.
Mm-hmm.
I let it go pretty quickly now. You know, almost immediately I said, it's okay.
Yeah, well, so there you
He
go.
is like me. We are one.
You've
So
come
now
up
that's how I
with a mechanism to diffuse the vibration. It's the
Yeah.
same general idea.
Yeah.
And if there were terrible accidents or periods of severe road rage in the past, not saying that there are, but you may need to clear those to really enhance not even going into the space of road rage. You know, like, it's all energetic. In some level, it's energetic. The solutions are always different, but the foundation is vibrational. Erica, Minty,
Yeah.
Chris, guys, anything I can help with before we sign off?
Can we send out the link to where these are saved again?
They
Or
never,
I can,
I'm the negligent one. They never went anywhere, but they
oh, okay.
they will. Now that I have 170 liters of rice and oat milk,
Sorry,
I can focus on
back to the medications or the suggestions.
what do you think, Erica?
Are they only, because I'm not vaccinated, do I need to get these? Because I'm on disability, so I don't.
So if you're around, so apparently when people first get vaxxed up, they shed there's viral shedding that happens. And the viral shedding is that spike protein that gets thrown. When people are like, oh, my body's building all these wonderful antibodies. That's why I'm sick as shit and dying here. It's like, no, actually, you're fighting off a weapon that doesn't agree with your biochemistry. And so that for a few weeks after getting vaxxed up, a lot of people shed the spike proteins. And if you're in their company, you can actually contract it as well. And plus all the toxins I was speaking of are prevalent. I would say just do it. Minty, just do it for a few weeks and see how you feel. I drink that Tulsi tea is actually really very pleasant.
Can you type that up in an email? Thanks.
I have about 6 boxes of Tulsi tea. So if somebody can't find it, or I can send a box to you and you can try it. Cami, the medical intuitive that Allan put me in contact with, she said just to even touch it for 30 seconds to the water.
Yeah, when you're just starting.
And you think you're nuts. Yeah, you think you're nuts, but it's potent stuff. But I can send you guys a box if you want to try it.
Yeah, if you can't find it, then they'll email you. It's like,
Yeah, where did you get it?
Amazon.
Amazon?
So that's really the only thing that Allan mentioned that I have a link to is the Tulsi tea.
I think you can get the
But I can send it to you.
dandelion leaves. I've seen that on Amazon because I think I've recommended for someone who had a stomach issue.
honestly, pick a few leaves out of the, go for a hike and find a few leaves. And
I live in New York.
there's an Central
I got a
Park
neighbor's lawn that's just can be
team.
full of them.
Wow.
You're certainly in Central Park. I don't know. There's got to be a park. I don't know a story that well.
I can go to Central Park, but you said it can't be sprayed.
Oh, it's got to be
Sprayed
full of
there.
pests. Yeah, it's got to
Yeah, I
be
was
full
gonna
of
say.
weed killer.
There's parks here. They're just all sprayed.
I'll go looking in my neighbor's field
Thank
here.
you. I love having sisters.
Apparently,
Can you
yeah, go ahead.
can you dry them and you like use them as tea, or do you have to like eat them readily off the plant?
So I was just told to pluck the leaves, but I've also drank the tea in the past. And
Okay.
honestly, it's like the way it comes in, it's not coming in with explicit instructions.
Yeah.
So are you recommending me to go into seclusion? Because people are, I think New York right now is 60%, if not 70% vaccinated. And because of what's the mandatory pass, more people getting vaccinated. So I should just stay home, my little 200 square feet apartment.
Stay home if it's joyous for you to stay home, but not claustrophobic. But otherwise, go out. Like, do what you want to do as much as you can do it without succumbing to the pressure of mandatory medical participation.
But more people are getting vaccinated. You said in the first couple of weeks, they're going to
So you have to
expel.
drink, yeah, so they shed. So, but if you're in a closed environment with them, you could be absorbing some of that. That's why those anecdotes that we just spoke of will help you.
Okay.
I would say try, especially now, where you are in September into October, you're kind of going to be stuck there for a while, from what I understand. And so like, we're all brought to a place where we're intended to be for the foreseeable future, and things are going to get more challenging. So if it's still summer and you can sit outdoors and you can enjoy socializing with friends, take advantage of it. Like, honestly, part of this journey is to find something joyous to fill each day.
Gonna have to talk with my higher self of why do we choose New York?
There's got to be a reason for it. Like Joanna and I don't really enjoy where we are, kind of the energy of the personality of the people around us, but we know that we were guided to be here because it's so protected, it's so tucked away. And I've been told a million times over that you have so much guidance pouring in that is carrying you forward. And if it's ever unclear to you, just ask for greater clarity. But you are where you are. Like I said, like, you never know, the thing could go crazy. And then there's like a prepper living downstairs from you who like hands you his keys and his last breath. And he's like, I'm not going to make it, but have all my food and supplies. And And by the way, there's booze under the sink.
No
Yes.
booze, Alan, no booze. We're sober.
And fresh lime.
It's all I know. I've been watching you. All your favorite foods are been stored in my home. I don't know how it plays out, but crazier things have happened.
It's just because New York is so dense, and then there's a lot of fear and anxiety. And when you put someone like me who's extremely energy sensitive, I mean, this is why I've stayed seclusion, trying to restore my energy, because if what happened to my body March 2020 all the way through last year, I was getting wiped out, and I had to stand up to hold space for people.
I'm gonna ask more explicitly, see if I can draw some guidance for you, more of an explanation. And keep in mind that there will still be travel for a number of months. There might be fewer flights, there might be different restrictions, but you may be called out of the city at some point when things start to shift, and you'll know it. It will feel right. Like you'll know it. So just because you're there now doesn't mean that's where you stay.
But if I leave, would that affect the ley line?
It's not. You don't have to worry about that.
Are you sure? Because they specifically
Trust me.
said that
Trust
this
me.
subject-
Trust me. And trust me. Don't.
Okay.
We only focus on our vibration, and we move our human mind out of the equation as much as possible to allow for spirit, the divine essence, to call us forward. You don't have to. You're not responsible for saving humanity. Okay. I know you have a martyr syndrome.
Sun in the 12th house, can't help it.
Is the sun in the 12th house? Very good. Sacrifice the service to humanity. So we'll get through this period, and then magnificent things await us on the other end. Like, it will be the closest to being of spirit, like in our spiritual essence, but while incarnate, just surrounded by others that are of spirit, those that make it. It'll be like the community that we revere so much will become the default environment that we live in, at least for a while. And then we'll be responsible for helping humanity move forward. It's just a matter of moving through this challenging period and calling for help and doing what you can, as Chris was saying earlier, standing in your truth, making choices that emanate from high vibration, and moving into acceptance for the consciousness of those that we love, and finding plan Bs where necessary. It's all part of this journey right now. And to find joy in each day, whatever that looks like, something joyous. And if you can't access joy easily, start with a vibration of gratitude. Gratitude will transition you into joy. So the things that you're grateful for become evident, it becomes the segue into finding the joy.
Yeah, in our community, we send out gratitudes daily. I'm happy to exchange it with you guys, but it's the practice to wake up and do 5 to 10 gratitudes a day to change our thoughts.
Yeah, I think apparently you just have to write down 3 each night before going to bed.
For addicts, we go all the way.
Yeah, 10.
Overachiever.
10. If you're a recovering addict, you have to go out to 10 because they go extreme on everything. But most of us apparently can benefit by simply articulating 3 moments of gratitude each day. Over the course of a month, it can just change your vibrational state. For those that have trouble reaching joy, it's a wonderful mechanism. Yeah.
Do you want to tell me the good news about everybody here being a baby frog? I thought it was so beautiful. Did you tell them?
I don't know. It's just another metaphor.
It helped me. Just tell them.
So,
please.
The story. So and then we'll say goodnight, right? We'll say for me it's dinner time. So that after this we'll plan our next meeting a month from now or so. And so when I was young, we had a country house up near the Vermont border, and I used to love it as a kid because we'd spend our summers there, out mostly naked, running around the fields. We had this big, beautiful pond, and every springtime, I was always so excited the ice would melt and the sun would be getting stronger. And I would see like these, like almost looked like an oil slick. It would be like a part of the pond that was just teeming with black tadpoles. And I loved more than anything the frogs, because I knew the frog, like I named some of them. I knew them where they like to hang out in the pond, and I could always try to catch them. And so in springtime, I'd be like, holy crap, there's going to be 10,000 new frogs this year, because I'd see just like thousands and thousands of tadpoles. And then by the time May and June came around, there weren't that many tadpoles. There were a couple of little baby frogs, but there weren't that many of them. And by the end of the summer, I'd only ever see a couple new frogs around the pond. And so once in a channeling session, because I'd had chronic illness and a lot of challenges in my incarnation, and I had gone into conversation with a higher being. I was being guided. And I remember I was like, what happens to those who choose a challenging incarnation, who suffer continuously and then end up dying without reaching consciousness? Because the suffering is almost always a catalyst for awakening. But many incarnate and only suffer and don't reach consciousness. And I said, how do you reconcile that? And the response was, we prefer to focus on those that are successful. And I really, really struggled with that possibility, thinking that you could spend your whole life suffering and then simply die in your state of suffering, not having realized why you came. And so I went out for a run afterwards. And in my mind, as I went for the run, and I hadn't thought of this since I was like a 6-year-old child, the image of all the tadpoles came into my mind, and how I was still really excited each summer to have 2 or 3 new frogs. And as soon as I had those frogs to play with, I largely forgot about the other 10,000 tadpoles that didn't make it. Because even as a child, I preferred to focus on those that were successful. And so Minthi had asked me, because she has a Capricorn moon, so everything is about, it's not competitive in the traditional sense, but it's just driven energy, it's always trying to measure its increments forward. The Capricorn has this determination to always be one step ahead of where it was previously. And so she asked me to like explain to her where she was or in her journey. And I said, you're a little frog. You're a little frog. She's like, I made it to a little frog. I'm like, yeah, you're already a little frog. You're not like you're not the Buddha hanging out on a lily pad. You're not the bullfrog yet, but you're no longer you're well beyond the stage of the tadpole. And
so all of us here are baby frogs, yeah?
No, sure. If you can participate in this conversation where I'm talking about beings that exist under the earth that are influencing the DNA of the planet and have desire to harm us through bioweapons and not bat an eye at it, and then desire to grow and to evolve energetically at every opportunity, yeah, you stepped into it. And I can tell you that it's much easier when you become a little frog to become a big frog than it is to go from being a tadpole to a frog. It's still a lot that has to go right. Still a lot that has to go right. And it's a combination of your determination to keep going. No matter what, it's this desire to always keep going, combined with a lot of spiritual intention and oftentimes a lot of good fortune that comes together to make it happen.
I think also connection too.
I think that's part of the equation.
On the right path, guys.
Yeah, just keep going. You know you're aligned when something excites you. You know you're aligned when you can reflect on an experience with joy. Those are the events that are intended to carry you forward. Like the next level of consciousness, you're not going to be enslaved to do a job that you don't like, to worry about debt and financial concerns, certainly not to put a diaper on your face because somebody tells you need to wear one before going into a restaurant. Face diapers everywhere. I'm like, really? I'm like, dude, you're sitting in your car and you're wearing a face diaper.
Yes.
And you got the windows up. You know, like, is the steering wheel going to give you COVID? Like, what am I missing here? You know, like, I look at them and I'm like, that guy's not going to make it. There's too much fear coursing through him. He got locked into an old vibrational pattern that he wasn't able to see his way through. But yes, you're beautiful. I'm a little frog hopping around with you. I'm like, come on, guys, there's a lot of adventure out there. I'm like, look out for the largemouth bass.
Yeah.
Just another frog, just a little frog. I kid you not, just a little frog. I make as many mistakes as I make correct choices. Yeah. This is when everyone says, yes, Allan, it's time to go.
Yes.
Thank you so
Thank you,
very
Allan.
much. Great.
Thank you, and
Yes.
congratulations on your engagement.
Congratulations
And the
on your
baby.
engagement.
She's beautiful.
Yeah.
Those
That's good.
cheeks, those eyes.
Okay. I'm gonna give you one more, just one more. So Joanna loves, there's this point along the Adriatic, because she grew up on the Mediterranean goes north along the east coast of Italy. It's the Adriatic Sea. And she has this point that shoots out into the sea where you can watch the most spectacular sunsets. And as a child, she would always just ride her bike there and just one night to the next, just watch the sunset. And so when I came into her world, she's like, oh, you have to come with me and watch the sunset. And sometimes I was like chatty Cathy, or I was distracted, or I was like, and she's like, no, you've got to be present and enjoy the beauty of the sun. It just watches the sky lights up with the most magnificent colors as the sun sets. And there were days where I was like, oh, I'm stuck on my computer, or I got stuck on a phone call, and she would genuinely get really upset with me that we would miss the sunset. And so I was in my meditative state and I got really deep and I said, why is she so jacked up about watching the sunset? And it explained to me that when you return to spirit, you can string together any moments from an incarnation and have them all almost like a flip book, where the moments just go sequentially one to the next to the next. And it explained to me that for many thousands of incarnations, Joanna is actually, her spiritual self has carried her to watch sunsets on all the different planets that she's incarnated in. And she's created the most enormous of flip books, so that when she returns to spirit, she just gets to watch them all unfold and see like spectacular sunsets from all over. And so part of what draws her into that space is that she's just adding more pages or more photographs into her image book. And so I had a ring made for her, which is a beautiful diamond ring that's entirely understated, that if you didn't look closely, you wouldn't even know it's an engagement ring, because she doesn't want anything that draws unnecessary attention. And we went to her favorite spot to watch the sunset. And for the last year, every time there's a beautiful moment between us, she often says, okay, that's great, but where's my ring? Like, where's my ring? Where's my ring? She's like, yes, Allan's very romantic, but where's my ring? And so this time we're watching the sunset and the sky started to light up with reds and oranges and yellows. And I said, this is like and I learned to just be quiet and to be present with her when I'm there. And I was like, wow, it's really perfect. Like, it's just so beautiful and romantic. And she says, yeah, but where's my ring? And this time I said, actually, it happens to be right here.
Oh.
Yay.
So I proposed to her in that setting, knowing that I was adding another page to her flip book.
Really important page.
That's an important page. And then I did something more formal, and on the stone, I was like, let's see if this may or may not be of value after the fact, but let me get on a knee and try it again. And just to make sure she had all the angles that she could choose from. I'm like, this is probably not the way it works, but I'm going to cover all my bases. And so that was it. So we have a beautiful almost 3-month-old daughter who is just magnificent. And we're now coming into 3 years together. We'll be 3 years this winter. And so now we're engaged. And when the madness subsides and we can have friends and family come and join us. We'll have a big spectacular wedding and celebrate a life together. Yeah, and that's the knowing that I speak of. The night I met her, I knew we were supposed to be together. And so like on our first or second date, I told her that it would sound crazy, but I believed that we were always meant to be. I didn't know that we would be successful because free will and all sorts of obstacles enter the equation. But I had that knowing that this was intended. Just as I have a knowing that I'm where I'm intended to be, just as I have a profound knowing that there's challenges ahead, but that there's beautiful things on the other side. That's the knowing that's carrying with me right now. And you all have the ability to access that same knowing. I assure you, it's actually operating in your life. You may not be aware of it, but it's all there for you. It's just a matter of listening to it. Taking the time, settling in, and hearing that knowing.
Thank you, Allan.
Thank
Thank you
you.
again.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thanks,
Yeah.
guys.
You know, I used to be a wedding dress designer, just throwing it out there before my baptism.
So that
I'll show you guys my illustrations one day.
send it over. Let Joanna pick one.
Oh.
It'll be something to look forward to. You'll make the dress and join the wedding.
I'll give you a weather forecast.
Yeah, Chris, you'll tell us the date. I'll turn my light here. Oh, maybe not. Chris, you'll tell us the day to get
I'll
married.
babysit.
Sure.
Yeah, Anna, you and the girls will babysit. Erica will help with
Yes.
making sure
The
that,
flower arrangements.
that the environment is absolutely.
All right. I'm in.
It's something to look forward to.
Definitely.
Yeah.
The most spectacular of celebrations. You guys will all make your way to Italy, and we'll have a beautiful, beautiful time.
I got the chills. So
Yeah,
yes.
that would be so awesome.
Yeah, once it's possible, we'll have something to look forward to beautifully. And it'll be like an affair where you guys will come for a week or two and we can all just hang out. The wedding will just be a detail. The rest of it will be the communion that we share.
We'll eat your soup.
Yeah.
Stored.
I'll be like, hey guys, crazy thing, 170 cans of uneaten organic soups. Like,
Yep.
I know, I was crazy. I didn't eat them after all.
It have to be one big wedding.
Guess what's for dinner, guys? Oatmeal, canned salmon, and soup.
LCT.
And oatmeal.
Allan's got the retreat food figured out already, so we're good.
Muesli. I got muesli. I got trail mix. Who wants trail mix, guys? I know most weddings are like you pay for your plate, right? It's like $100 a head. You're like, this one's $4.99.
And it comes in its own individual bags.
You just pop the lid
And
off the
cans.
cans. I got a little stovetop burner here. It's portable. I got to get through this gas.
Oh,
Have a beautiful day, everyone.
thanks, everybody.
We'll speak with you
Please
guys.
send the recording.
Okay, I'll send the recording. I'll send the recording.
Grazie,
And we'll talk to you guys within a month.
Ciao.
All right.
Ciao, ciao.
Okay.
Good night. Bye.
See everybody.
Bye-bye.